You need to maintain a Purifiner Minirack Ultraviolet disinfection system to make sure the well and lake water at your home, cottage, or cabin stays safe and bacteria-free for your family. But you've never done it before and you're not sure where to start. No problem. In this video, I'll go through the whole process step by step, and I'll include some tips and tricks that I use so you can maintain the system like a pro. Hi, I'm Gary the Water Guy, and I simplify water filtration to help you conquer crappy water for your family. And you'll definitely want to hang around right to the end of this video because throughout, I'll be sharing with you the tips and tricks that I use to maintain these systems like a pro. And by the way, Water-Right makes these Minirack UV systems for Purifiner, Water Depot, and others by combining the duplex filter manifold with the Exolite UV light. So if you have any of those systems that look exactly like this, the procedure is exactly the same. If you're not 100% sure on how these ultraviolet disinfection systems actually work, I've got a great YouTube video that explains it all. I've got a link in the description down below. Check it out. And some operational guidelines. The UV lamp needs to be replaced after 12 months of use. The filters need to be replaced at 12 months of use, or if they've become so clogged that they slow down the water flow in your home, cottage, or cabin. If you have a seasonal situation where you're shutting down the cottage or cabin at the end of the season and you want to protect it from freezing, you need to drain the whole system. And the quartz sleeve needs to be cleaned annually. If you can't get it perfectly clean, it needs to be replaced. So before you get started, there's a few things you need to prepare. Obviously, you need to make sure that you've got a replacement lamp, you've got replacement filters, but it's also a good idea to have a replacement sleeve because they're very fragile and easily broken. And remember, if you don't replace that sleeve, then the system is totally non-operational. And make sure you've got some cloths and rags because there will be some water spilled. When the UV system is first installed, the ballast displays 365 and then it counts down the days to when it's time to replace the lamp. Once it gets down to 0 and past 0, it displays A3 and it goes into alarm. Now it's telling you it's time to replace that lamp. You can push the button on the front here. That'll silence the alarm for 7 days and it'll start beeping again. It'll allow you to do that 4 times, and after that, it'll just keep on beeping until you do the maintenance. All right, let's get started. First step is to unplug the power. That allows the system to cool down. While the system is cooling down, what I mean by the system, the UV chamber itself is cooling down because the lamp makes the chamber quite hot. So this is the time to start to change the filters first. So now we shut off the water going into the system, and then you go anywhere in the house, open up a faucet, let the water run till it slows right down to a trickle to release the pressure in the system. Then grab your filter housing wrench and undo the filter housings. So remember, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So we'll loosen those up. And I suggest you do it one at a time so you don't mix up the filters. So unscrew that, and then you put a bucket underneath. So you would dump that out, wash it out really well, and then use some plumber's clear silicone grease to grease the O-ring on the top. Then you'd pop in the filter. So I suggest, well, it has to be a 5 micron sediment filter, but I suggest one of these 5005s because it's 50 microns on the outside, 5 microns on the inside. So pop that in there. And the same thing on the second filter housing. So the second filter housing typically has a carbon filter in it. So again, you would dump it out in the water, wash it all out, grease the O-ring. You would replace it with a carbon filter. So a carbon filter like this will work great. Or if you want an extra level of protection, removing things like cysts and viruses, then one of these filters is a better solution and gives you better filtration. It's more expensive, but yeah. So obviously you would unwrap the plastic wrap from these, pop them inside, close it back up. So what I do is I tighten these hand tight and then give it a little bit more with the wrench. Just like that. And if you're wondering where to find the replacement lamps, sleeves, and filters, you can go to our websites, either waterestore.com in the US or waterestore.ca in Canada. We offer free shipping and discount pricing. Now keep in mind the replacement UV lamps and sleeves will be under Exolite. When handling the UV lamp itself or the quartz sleeve, it's always a great idea to either have gloves on or use a nice clean rag. So then all you do is undo the nut over here, slide out the lamp, and it's just pushed onto the electrical connector here. So you just wiggle a little bit, bring it out. Sometimes it's so stuck in there, if you wedge a very thin screwdriver in there and pry at the end off, that'll work. And then pull the lamp straight out. And then you need to undo the Glen nuts at each end. Now these should only be hand tight if they were done correctly, but sometimes someone got carried away and you may have to use slip joint pliers to get them loose. And then undo both ends of the Glen nut. Take the electrical connection and put it up somewhere so it's out of the way, because we don't want to get water into it. Now, this is one thing that I absolutely hate about these systems. You see, the O-ring has become pushed inside here, and it's very, very difficult to get it out. It would make sense that you can kind of move the sleeve back and forth to get it loose, but it won't come out. So what you need to do, you need to use a very small screwdriver and kind of pry this out, hopefully without breaking that quartz sleeve. And at this point, it's very, very difficult to get that out and to get the quartz sleeve out without damaging it. And again, it's one of the things I absolutely hate about this system and why I don't recommend it. So once you get that O-ring out, there will be some water coming out of here. So make sure you got your bucket ready. As you can see, it's awful. And it's finally loose. And then we pull the O-ring off the other end and pull out the sleeve. Be careful, there's a spring at the bottom here. Make sure you don't lose that spring. And then we clean this sleeve with CLR or vinegar or any other kind of a descaler. If you can't get it perfectly clean, you have to replace the sleeve. And then it goes back in. This is the next thing I don't like about these systems, is that in the manual, it says that when you put the sleeve in, you should leave the ends protruding by 1 inch on each end. Well, the sleeve isn't long enough to do that. So then you need to slide on the O-rings. Whatever you do, don't lubricate them with plumber's clear silicone grease, because what happens is when you apply some water pressure to this, that slipperiness of the plumber's clear silicone grease will actually allow the sleeve to shift a little bit and you'll get a leak. So just wet them with some water and then slide the O-rings on each end. Try to keep the same amount protruding from each end. So the closed end goes on the end where the closed end of the sleeve is, and don't tighten it up all the way, just so you start to feel some resistance, and then close it up on this end. And this whole process is very finicky, and it's almost impossible not to get a leak, which again is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of these systems. We cringe whenever we do a service call on these Purifiner or Water Right or Water Depot systems because of that leak, because of the potential of that leak. All right, once we've got that in there and it's hand tight, then grab the lamp, slide it in. Now there's 4 pins on the end of the lamp, and there's obviously 4 holes here. So you just match that up. So you can see there's 4 pins on the lamp and 4 holes here. So just be careful that you put them in correctly. If they don't seem to line up, turn it 90 degrees and it will line up, and then push it all the way in. So you need to make sure it is 100% home, pushed right up close to the connector, and then feed it in and tighten up the set screw here to hold it in place. The next step is that you need to power it back up, but as you're powering it up, you're also going to need to reset the timer. And to do that is you hold down this button while you're plugging it in, and it'll go. Now normally this one is brand new, so it didn't go to reset, but normally it'll start with the lighting the whole thing up. It'll say reset as it does right now. It'll beep, you let go, and it shows you 365, because the controller doesn't know that you replaced the lamp until you reset it. Then you open up the ball valve and let the whole system fill. Now I only open it up halfway, and that way you check for leaks. If there's no leaks in the system, then you can open it up all the way. Again, double check for leaks. If everything looks good, then you could open up the valve to let the water go to the whole house. And then you go somewhere, a laundry sink or a laundry tub, or a bathtub or somewhere that has big flow, open up the faucet to flush all the fines from the new filters out. Click here for your next video on ultraviolet disinfection, and I'll see you there. Any questions? Add them down below.